p.m. this morning for this session on crypto trust, which means cryptography and cryptocurrencies. So we are going to start our conference session. We are very proud to present cryptography at TRUSTECH this year. You know that cryptography is everywhere. Cryptography is in communications, in software, applications, in hardware. It is needed for identity, for authentication, for data integrity, for privacy management. So it's really cryptography is at the core of trust today. So to talk about this important dimension of trust, I would like to welcome Mrs. Eileen Connolly from Ingenico Company. Eileen, good morning.
Good morning. Nice to meet you.
Okay. We are happy you are here. So you represent Ingenico Company, and perhaps before you talk, I would just like to introduce your subject, which is that we are all using communications on the web for our emails, for our e-commerce, and also for our messaging. And that's a very important dimension of our protection on the web and on the internet. So where are we today? Where are we going? This is what you're going to present us. Thank you very much, Eileen.
Thanks for having me. So as Guy said, I'm a cryptographer working at Ingenico. And I have a slightly strange position in the sense that I work within the industry, but I'm also an academic researcher. And so I see both sides of the story. And when we talk about encryption, it has had kind of a long history in the sense that traditionally it was built and used by the military for keeping secrets and whatever. And then around the 70s, payments started and international commerce, and they needed to secure things, so the industry started getting involved. And in parallel, academics started working on cryptography. And it took quite some time, actually, for academics and industry to work together. And one of the biggest kind of projects where academics and industrial people worked together was on securing the internet. And this is what I will talk to you about a bit today. So can I? There. So yeah, when we talk about security on the internet, I want to ask, how far have we come? Sometimes we see that innovation can be quite slow, and sometimes things don't work. And I mean, as technology progresses, it goes very, very fast. So it's difficult to actually keep up to date with very secure and robust software. So yeah, the question today is, how far have we come? And as I said, it took quite some time for academics and industry people to work together. So both sides of these researchers, the academics and the industry people, have different motives for working in this. And industry people want to get a product that works and is secure and cannot be broken, whereas academics have sort of an intellectual want for solving problems, and it's not about making money. And so sometimes they have different interests, and both of these can go in two different directions. But hopefully I will convince you today that sometimes they can work hand in hand. So TLS, I feel, is the biggest. So TLS is the transport layered security that works on the internet. So basically you have the internet, and there's a lot of traffic flowing around between your browser and lots of servers. And all of this traffic up until the 90s was kind of pretty free for all. I mean, you could look at it. Whereas around the 90s, they started saying, okay, maybe we need to start securing this. And they started building security on the internet. And now, the moment you start to think about this, it becomes quite a difficult problem, actually, because you see that, there are cryptographic objects, which we call primitives. And then you piece these cryptographic objects together, and you get these kind of suites. And then you put some suites together, and you get some functionality. You put these functionalities together, and you make some libraries. And on top of all of this, you have applications. So I can show you some examples. So in terms of applications, there are things like browsers, servers, certificates, protocols. In terms of libraries, there are just many, many libraries full of code that you can use to build your applications. These libraries are built with functions which give you sort of alerts or errors. You can give certificates or revoke certificates. You can resume sessions, things like this. These functions come from different kind of suites that are made from different data structures, different encodings, different types of keys, how you make them, different modes of operation for the encryption. And all of this is built upon cryptographic primitives, which are things like RSA and Diffie-Hellman and hash functions and things like this. So you see that, starting in the 70s, you have some things like, let's say, RSA. Everybody knows RSA, so this is a good example to go with. You have these primitives, these like basic cryptographic objects. Then you start to need to piece them together because you want more and more functionality. And once you start piecing them together, then a lot of problems can arise. And then you want more and more functionality, so you need to piece more and more and more things together. And so you end up like having huge stacks of things built on top of each other, and it becomes a very difficult problem. There are a lot of places for things to go wrong, basically. And with the internet, I mean, now it's like the most used technology, let's say. I mean, everyone in the world almost uses the internet. So to try and find some sort of protocol or some sort of framework that you can use to keep secure all of this traffic is quite a big challenge. And as I said, in the 70s, a lot of industry started building cryptography for payments and for commerce mostly. And then in the 90s, they started building software to try and secure the internet. And I can start. They started in the 90s with SSL. And, this was kind of an okay attempt at building security for the internet. But, throughout the 90s, there were a series of attacks on SSL. It was not so good. It was closed. It was built by one company. It was, basically not so good. But this was kind of the start of security on the internet. Then, just around the turn of the century, TLS came around. And TLS then was this new kind of wave of security for the internet. And it was kind of a full kind of redesign of SSL in the sense that they sat down and said, okay, we have seen now how the internet works a bit. We know what kind of the problems are. Let's sit down and redesign and do it from scratch. And this is what they did. So with TLS, it came also many problems. There were many attacks. So in 2002 and 2006 were the two kind of biggest attacks. And so in 2006, then they released a new version. Again, then with this new version, there were attacks. In 2008, they released a new one. And so this was, I can go on to the next one. This was, the kind of approach that much of crypto, when I say crypto, I mean cryptography, sorry. I'm one of those on that camp. But when I say cryptography, I mean, when industry takes this approach, it kind of builds cryptography. It tries to build something that it thinks is a good idea. Then it breaks, and then they fix it, and then it breaks again, and they fix it. So they take this kind of ad hoc approach to, okay, let's try this. We think this is a good idea. Maybe it works. Maybe it works for some time. And maybe it breaks. If it does, we fix it. So this was kind of the standard approach to cryptography within industry. It's like this bug, fix approach. Whereas in academia, they take a kind of very different approach. In academia, they say, okay, I have lots of math, I have lots of interesting things in my mind. I want to think about cryptography in the sense that, you know, I want to make sure that I have a secure channel, let's say, or I want to know that if I send you a message, it will be kept secret. Or, you know, I just want to protect information in whatever sense. And they do this often via lots of math. And, you know, cryptographers generally write proofs. So when they talk about security, they give some sort of notion of provable security. They give you some bounds. There's a threat model and they have adversaries, and you can say like, okay, given an adversary with this much power, in this sort of scenario, how much security will hold. And so this is something that was kind of lacking from cryptography in industry. So around, after TLS 1.2, cryptographers kind of, the academic cryptographers kind of joined with industrial cryptographers to try and bring, you know, provable security with industrial kind of ad hoc methods. And so this was quite a big, actually, advancement in cryptography, in my opinion. And like before, I don't want to like bash either side, but you know, the two worlds were quite separate. And like academic cryptographers would sometimes work in industry, and they would start to see these protocols that they knew nothing about, yet they're the most widely deployed cryptographic protocols within industry, and yet, you know, the most famous academic cryptographers have never heard of them. And so there was a reluctance to work with industry, but now, yeah, in around 2008, they started working together. And then they started to change TLS 1.2 and to make a new version which was more secure from an academic standpoint and more usable from an industrial standpoint, which was actually the best thing. So if I go back to my picture with the primitives that are used to build the suites, that are used to build the functionality, that's used to build the libraries, that are used then to build the applications, cryptographers came along, the academic cryptographers came along with all of their proofs, and they can show, like with the primitives and the suites, they can give actual mathematical proofs that security holds within a particular scenario. So the bottom part of the picture was taken care of with provable security, with lots of math. Then with libraries and functions, so these are specific protocols or specific software, now they have these formal methods that can kind of test these protocols and this software to show that there's no bugs and there's no errors and that it will work for sure, like, so software proofs, basically. And so this covers, you know, really a lot of the problems of TLS. This covers, you know, you have your mathematical proofs, you have your software proofs for all of your underlying primitives, for all of your code, for all of your functionality. And so this is quite great, actually, but it took some time. As I said, TLS 1.2 was in 2008. And then when the academic cryptographers started coming along and working together with industrial people, it gained a lot more steam, a lot more traction. So a lot more people were looking at internet security. And so there were a long series of really bad attacks. And basically, they broke internet security many, many times, but kept fixing it and kept writing these mathematical proofs and these software proofs and taking insights from industry. And everybody worked together. And there was a long standardization process to design this huge framework, basically, for how security should work on the internet. And yeah, then in 2018, just earlier this year, they finally decided, okay, this is it, we have it, we've done it. We have a framework that we have shown, we have proved to be secure in many different ways. It's faster than before. And so they finally standardized everything, and this year it was completely finished. So in August, just a few months ago, now everything is finished. So now what happens? The other question is, you know, I keep talking about the difference between industry and academia, and the question is, okay, you've spent 10 years now building this framework and writing all your proofs and writing all your software. Is anybody actually using it? And this is the big question. And so the answer in short is yes, actually, because everybody really, I mean, all of industry wants secure internet for many reasons. And actually, you know, the upgrade to TLS 1.3 has been quite some efforts. As I said, it took 10 years between all the academics and the industry people. But now, really, all of the major companies that use most of the internet have actually deployed TLS 1.3. So it's so Facebook were the ones that led the revolution, let's say. So Facebook has now integrated TLS 1.3, so they have super secure communication. Maybe not secure everything else, but also Chrome have really made some efforts to deploy TLS 1.3. So I think, you know, 48% or something of the internet goes through Google and through Facebook. And so, you know, if these are deploying TLS 1.3, we're in good hands. And so that's it. I'll just finish with this slide. So one of the biggest projects for TLS was called Everest. And this was a huge collaboration of many academics and many industrial people. And this Everest project was one of the biggest projects to show that the software was secure. And so, yeah, in summary, basically, we have reached the peak of our Everest. And that's it. Thanks very much.
A large applause for Esling. Thank you, Esling, for your very interesting presentation. And maybe we have questions on the room. At least I would like to start with one of my own. You've talked a lot about securing the internet with TLS, but we also have we have seen a lot of improvement in the messaging, you know, Facebook Messenger, Skype, WhatsApp. So some of them, I think, are end-to-end, like WhatsApp, but a lot of others, including Telegrams and things like that, they are just web-to-server encryption. So the operators could decrypt, could use a key. So do you think it's a problem, or do you think there will be an evolution to end-to-end encryption everywhere, or how do you see this evolution in the messaging context?
Actually, this is a really nice question, and if I could have asked you to ask me one question, that's it. And we didn't plan this, by the way. But as I said, you know, this TLS deployment was one of the biggest things in cryptography. It was one of the biggest efforts made by academic cryptographers and industrial cryptographers, and it was successful. So this is, in my opinion, the biggest success. In terms of messenger apps and whatever, I think this revolution, cryptography, like end-to-end encryption on messaging apps, is the biggest fluke that happened. I mean, this was a big effort, but messaging apps is the biggest fluke. Because end-to-end encryption for Messenger is not easy, but it's not as difficult, let's say, as securing the internet. But there was one day, literally, where WhatsApp turned on encryption, and immediately 1 billion people have encrypted Messenger. So this, for me, is the greatest thing. Now, of course, all of them are not secure, so not end-to-end encrypted, and this is a problem. But the fact that the biggest one is a great thing, I think. And I feel like it will not be long before most people will have encrypted everything.
Thank you, Ashley. Okay. Do we have some other questions in the room? Yes, please.
Hello. What's the next biggest challenge for industry and academia to partner?
Actually, this is the other question that I would have liked, and I meant to mention this in the talk. So, again, as I said, you know, academia and industry got very much together for securing the internet. Now this is blockchain revolution. And like with TLS, you know, there are primitives that are used, I mean, there's a whole stack of things that are built all on top of each other, and there's lots of room for error, and we saw that, like, really a lot of things went wrong. Blockchain is quite the same. Okay, it's not such a big scale, but there are lots of primitives that are put together. There are lots of applications then built on this, and then there are lots of all sorts of, you know, functionalities now that keep getting built in. So I think the biggest thing is, I don't want to say it, but the biggest thing is blockchain. And I think the same kind of effort will be needed from industry and academia to come together to standardize some framework, let's say, like TLS, but for blockchains.
Thank you, Esling. Last question.
Just following on from what you've said, I'm a telecoms guy, and I worry about software bloat, and I worry about that with blockchains, that we need to almost strip back, as you've said, strip back and make sure something is designed for speed. Otherwise, the latency is going to be horrible. Would you agree?
Yeah, and it already is. You know, I mean, the latency in things like blockchains, many blockchains are okay now. They're starting to do some stuff, but with Bitcoin, latency is a disaster. Privacy is a disaster. You know, I mean, there's a zero latency, almost zero privacy. So, yeah, I mean, there are quite some efforts now, but at the moment, I think it's still, people are very excited and everyone's trying to grab, you know, the low-hanging fruit. And, you know, there needs to be like a real deep sit-down conversation, 10 years of banging heads to come up with some sort of nice framework, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We need to pass to other speakers, but I invite you to contact directly Esling if you have more questions to her. Thank you very much,
Thanks
Esling.
for having
Thank you
me.
for your presentation. So now we are going to talk about the near future, because in cryptography there is a major issue, as you know, is quantum computing is arriving, and we need to perhaps to learn a new cryptography, to put in place a quantum cryptography in order to match the challenge arriving. So we have an excellent specialist on these questions that is going to teach us how is the new reality about this. I'm inviting on the stage Mr. Klaus Schmey from CryptoVision.
Hello.
Hello. Mr. Klaus Schmey, welcome. And well, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Guy, and welcome to my presentation. Well, excuse me, can you tell me how this works? I would like to proceed to the next slide. Okay. This button here. Okay, thanks. The green button. Okay, sorry, I hope. Okay, thank you. Well, welcome again. My name is Klaus Schmey. I work for a German company named CryptoVision, and we specialize in cryptography and electronic identity solutions. Several colleagues of mine are here, so if you want to talk to them, you have the chance after my presentation. But let's now proceed to the actual topic. Well, as a crypto specialist, CryptoVision knows that there's the concept of quantum computers. This is a completely new kind of computers, and in the near future, or one day, it might be possible that quantum computers break the current crypto systems like RSA and Diffie-Hellman and a couple of others, mainly the asymmetric crypto systems. And so it's important to look at crypto systems that are not prone to quantum computing. And at the moment, there are mainly 6 families of crypto systems that are considered quantum proof. And none of these systems is really in widespread use or is in use at all at the moment. So as Guy said, we need to learn more or less a new kind of cryptography. And well, we have 20 minutes of time, so I will explain 2 of these 6 families. If you want to know more, just ask me after the presentation. So let's start with one of these families. And for this purpose, please welcome my first guest. This is Mr. Snail. And Mr. Snail will help us to explain lattice-based crypto systems, or as Mr. Snail would say, lattice-based encryption system. Well, to explain these systems, we need to define what a lattice is. This is pretty simple. In mathematics, a lattice is simply a set of parallels. If we talk about the 2-dimensional case, these parallels go in 2 directions, and the intersection points are called the lattice points, or as Mr. Snail would say, they are called the lattice points, or we can imagine them as lattices. And the lattice is, in this case, a lattice field. In this case, we talk about 2 dimensions, but as you will see, in practice, dimensions like 250 or so are used. So it's a lot more complicated than you can see here. Well, next question is, how can we define a lattice field? Well, this can be done using so-called base vectors. In the 2-dimensional case, we need 2 base vectors, of course. In this case, they are called A and B. But we can also use different ones. So in this case, we have A and B, the green ones, and C and D, the red ones, and they define exactly the same lattice field. But you certainly see that these vectors are different. We call the green ones good base because the vectors are nearly orthogonal, and we call the red ones a bad base. These are nearly parallel, but they define the same lattice field. And now let's look at the so-called closest lattice problem, which is referred to in the literature as the closest vector problem, but Mr. Snail explains it a little different. The closest lattice problems arises if we look, or if we place a snail somewhere in the field, and now the snail wants to reach the closest lattice, and of course the snail is pretty slow, so the snail is especially interested in the closest lattice. And this question, which lattice is, or which lattice point is the closest to the snail, is referred to as the closest lattice problem. And how can we answer it? Well, the question is pretty easy to answer if we are in the 2-dimensional room or 2-dimensional space. If we deal with 250 dimensions, it's a lot more difficult, or it's almost impossible, or it's still, let's say it this way, it's still easy if we have a good base, but it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, if we have only a bad base. This is important to note. And now we can define a one-way function out of this. The one-way function, a one-way function is a function that only works well in one direction, but is very complicated in the other. In this case, it's quite obvious that placing a snail in a lattice field is easy, but placing it in a way that the closest lattice is known is easy, but finding the closest lattice is difficult if only a bad base is available, and of course if we are in a very high dimension. And now we can use this fact to define a crypto system, a lattice-based crypto system, the so-called Goldreich, Goldwasser-Halevi, or GGH encryption system. Well, in this case, Alice's public key is a good base of a lattice field, and Alice's private key is a good base, sorry, and Alice's public key is a bad base of the same lattice field. And now, if Bob wants to encrypt something, Bob places a snail somewhere in the field, and the difference between, or the vector between the snail and the lattice is encodes the message. And remember, we are in the 250 dimensional space. This means that Bob has 250 components to encode his message, and this is of course enough for a key. And now, well, it's obvious Alice can decrypt this message because she knows a good base, and everybody else can't, unless this person can solve the closest lattice problem. Well, next question, is GGH a good scheme? Well, honestly, no, it isn't, because it is broken. But there are other methods which are similar. And, well, because of the limited time, I can only introduce one, the so-called learning with errors method. It is also based on lattices, but you won't see it because it's equivalent. We need, in this case, we need to look not at lattices or salads or anything like that, but we need to look at the system of equations, and this system of equations is equivalent to a lattice, but this is not something I'm going to explain right now. It's sufficient to know that we have a set of equations, and these equations are based on certain variables. And if you see this here, you see that we have only 3 variables, but 8 equations. So the system is overdefined, and you certainly know from your school time that an overdefined equation system is not solvable in the general case. But in this case, I choose the variable such that it is solvable. And well, you can see the solution here. And on all the following slides, the system I'm going to show are solvable too. Now, what happens in the next step is we add a few errors. For example, we add 1 to the first, to the result of the first equation, 2, or we subtract 2 to the second equation, and so on, and we leave some equations as they are. So basically, we have a number of errors, but these errors are small. Well, as you see here, we are calculating modulo 797. 797 is a prime number, and we still can use the same solution techniques as for an ordinary equation system. And as you see here, the errors are small compared to the modulus. And now we assume that only the incorrect results are known. That means we don't know that this here is 38 plus an error of 1. We only know that this is 39. The same here. We only know that the result is around 460 plus minus 2. There's a small error. This is all we know, and we do the same with all the other results. So we have an equation system, and we know that the results are wrong, but we know that the error is small. And now the question is, can the errors be detected without knowing X, Y, and Z? And the answer is yes, but it's very laborious. And if we're talking about a really big equation system, let's say of 250 dimensions, it's extremely laborious, if not impossible. And again, this leads us to a one-way function. The learning with errors one-way function. We assume that we have an equation system with a couple of errors, small errors, and adding these errors is simple, of course, but finding these errors without knowing the solution is extremely difficult. So this is a one-way function, and this can be used for asymmetric encryption. Well, how does this work? It's the so-called regef encryption scheme. Alice's private key is the solution of an equation system, Alice's public key is this equation system, including a couple of errors, small errors, as I said. And now, Bob, if he wants to encrypt something, he takes Alice's public key and he tosses a coin for every equation. And if he gets ahead, he keeps the equation. If he gets, I think it's a bunch of flowers or something like that, well, if he doesn't get ahead, he discards the equation. So this means, in general, Bob discards about half of the equations. And then he adds the remaining equations, which is, of course, if you know Gaussian elimination, it's clear that the result isn't changed by adding equations. Then he takes the result, and now he can take this result to encode 1 bit. Well, 1 bit is not very much, but this is all the system really can do. If he wants to encrypt a 0, he adds a 1 to the result. So in this case, he gets 718 instead of 717. And if he wants to encrypt a 1, he adds a 399, because that's the number with the biggest distance between the modulus and, to the modulus. So a small error encodes a 0, a big error encodes a 1. This is how the system works. And Alice can easily decode this because Alice knows X, Y, and Z. That's her private key. And knowing X, Y, and Z, it's pretty trivial to tell if the error is big or small. So this is a nice algorithm, but it encrypts only 1 bit. It can be extended to a more powerful scheme like PyCAT or New Hope, and these schemes can do a little more. Well, there's not enough time to talk about this today, but it's enough to know that it's possible. So I say, thanks, Mr. Snail. And now let's get to the second kind of encryption schemes I'm going to cover today. I welcome my next guest, and my next guest is an island salesman. Well, and this island salesman, guess what happened? Recently, Alice came to see this island salesman, and she said, well, I'm interested in buying an island. And of course, the island salesman offered a very nice island, and Alice said, yes, I'm interested, but I would like to look at it first. So what Alice did, she took a plane, flew to the island she wanted to purchase. And then, of course, before she left, she and the island salesman had to agree upon a code. So Alice wanted to send a message back to the salesman saying either, yes, I buy, or no, I don't. So it's basically 1 bit of information she transmits, not very difficult, but the problem is both can cheat. For example, Alice can send a yes and later say it was a no, or she can say a no and later say it was a yes. And of course, the salesman can cheat because he can say, well, I received a yes from Alice, although it was a no, or the other way around. So this is a scheme which is not secure. So we need to add something like a signature. And this is possible. I'm going to introduce a very interesting signature scheme. It's based on 2 safes. So let's assume that before Alice leaves, she signs 2 statements. The one statement is, yes, I buy. The other one is, no, I don't buy. And each statement is put into a different safe. And the combination is only known to Alice. So when Alice has made her decision, she can either send combination of safe 1 or the combination of safe 2. And if she, for example, sends the combination of safe 1, the salesman has a statement in his hand saying, I buy this island, and it is signed by Alice, so there's nothing that can happen. And of course, if she sends the combination of safe 2, it's the other way around. Well, in this case, Alice's private key are the 2 combinations. And one special thing about this scheme is that Alice has to reveal half of her private key. Of course, it may only be half of the key because otherwise the whole system is worthless. And she can use each key only once. So it's a lot of effort for only one bit, but this is how this kind of scheme works. And now let's try to transfer this to the digital case. Now we have the so-called hash-based signatures. In this case, the safes are replaced by a hashing function like SHA-2. The combinations are replaced by two random numbers, and the safes with the statements are replaced with two hash values of the two random numbers. And in this case, Alice's private key are the two random numbers, and the public key are the safes with the statements. And now, if Alice wants to say yes, she sends random number 1. The salesman can check if the hashing function actually delivers the result that is wanted. And if she doesn't want to buy, she sends random number 2. And again, the salesman can check it. So for signing one bit, Alice publishes either message 1 or message 2, but of course not both of them. And again, we have the situation that Alice can only sign one bit, and she has to reveal half of her private key. Well, so the keys are long here, and each key can only be once. So these hash-based signatures are certainly not the most efficient schemes, but they are known to be very secure because it can be proved that they are secure as long as the hashing function is not broken. So this is quite a good condition to use such a system. So that's it. This is the second system I wanted to introduce. Thanks, Mr. Salesman. And I'm sure, this was my post-quantum overview. I'm sure that some of these systems will be used in practice in the near future. And all I can say now is thanks and goodbye.
A big applause. Thank you, Mr. Klaus Schmey. A big applause. Thank you very much about this lesson on post-quantum cryptography. There are so many questions in the room. While you prepare your questions, I will ask you first questions. I was wondering, we heard that let's say many protocols from public key cryptography would be threatened by the arrival of quantum computing. And there is one scheme which is widely used, which is elliptic curve cryptography. Could you explain if this is threatened, yes or no, and in what proportion?
Yes, elliptic curve crypto systems are also prone to quantum computers. So if really good quantum computers will be available one day, we can't use elliptic curve systems anymore. They have to be replaced.
Okay. All right, thank you. And perhaps also another question is, we heard that the NIST is preparing a kind of concourse, no? I mean, a competition
yes.
for post-quantum solutions. Yeah. And do you have any idea about these different options, which methods could come up?
Yes. Well, I think there are, I don't know, 60 or 70 participants in this competition, so it's quite a lot. And all of the 6 families I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation take part. So it's not clear yet there will be several winners. So it's not the purpose that there is only one winner. There shall be several different systems to choose from, and it's not clear yet which of the algorithms will be among the winners, but I think we will see several based on several different principles. And there might be, I'm pretty sure that there will be a lattice-based system among the winners. And well, there's only one of the hash-based systems, because hash-based systems are actually not wanted in this competition, because as I said, they have some special properties, like they can be only used once. So the traditional hash-based systems are not in the competition.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, do we have other questions in the room for Mr. Klaus Schmey? No, you understood everything about quantum computing? You know, you should ask questions today, because tomorrow will be too late, so don't worry.
Is it possible for you to simply explain why those types of algorithms are quantum resistant?
Well, honestly not, because I'm not a quantum computer specialist. The simple answer is that, or it cannot be proven, it's just that so far no algorithms, no quantum computer algorithms have been found to break these systems. Algorithms have been developed for breaking RSA and Diffie-Hellman and a couple of others. For the ones I introduced here, nothing has been found so far. It may change, so it's possible that one day somebody comes up with an algorithm for a quantum computer that breaks lattice-based systems, and then we would have a problem, but so far this is not the case.
Thank you very much. No more questions? Well, thank you, Mr. Klaus Schmey, and you can contact him later if you want to raise your question in public. You can do it in private later directly with him. Thank you very much, Mr. Klaus Schmey. This is a large applause. So now we've seen a lot of things, but maybe we didn't see only half of the cryptography, which is the theoretical part. But as you know, there is half of the results in cryptography also depends of the quality of implementations. And this is a very, very sound and profound thematics. And to talk about that, we have a specialist, crypto specialist from École Normale Supérieure, Mr. Rémi Géraud. Please, Mr. Rémi Géraud, come on the stage. Okay. Welcome on stage, Mr. Rémi Géraud. So, you are one of the teachers of the École Normale Supérieure, and you are a very specialist on these questions of implementations of crypto in software, in applications, in hardware. Can you explain something to us today? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for the introduction. So yes, indeed, I'm a mathematician. I'm a cryptographer myself. I know a few of the speakers that went talk this morning. And the topic of my talk today will be not so much of not so much of questioning what has been said so far. This is absolutely correct for most of it. But adding a new perspective on the question of designing systems and how very good ideas, proven, mathematically correct ideas, can turn bad or very, very bad in the real world. And the kind of questions you need to ask yourselves, the kind of questions you need to think about when taking an idea from a white paper, from an academic journal, for instance, and trying to see whether it can become a product at the end of the day, which is not always the case. To that end, I will start with an inspirational question, so to speak. We as technologists, as people in science, we try to see ourselves as pioneers. We try to explore new territory, we try to do things that have not been done before, and we try to enable people to do new things. Now, we're not crazy either, so even when we explore new territory, uncharted territory, we do so with a safety line. And the question I want to ask you, which is a question that I suppose all of you have thought about, is what kind of safety line I want to trust. We wouldn't be doing that if it weren't for some kind of security guarantee, right? And so, what is a security guarantee? You heard this morning that there's been a lot of effort, and that's true, over the last 40 years to try and bring security to the masses, so as to enable commerce and communication, and new threats arise, and we have to develop, in advance of these threats, new solutions. If you look back in time, in the 19th century, early 19th century, the best you could get was about this. I, the author, am absolutely certain of the security of what I just proposed. Period. Now, what that means is that the best you could do back in the 19th century was trusting the guy, I mean, having faith in an individual who has faith in what he or she designed, or not have faith in this individual and not use their system. And that was about it. Of course, we've come a long way since the 19th century, right? Starting in the 1970s, you had papers like this one by Diffie and Hellman, who basically says, and I extracted the important quote, we can hope to have provably secure, has been mentioned, provably secure crypto systems, changing the ancient art of cryptography into a science. And that's what we want to do, right? We want to have provable security, not just hand-waving faith into someone's insights about it. But there's the paradox. If that's true, if we can prove things, if we have formal methods, if we have quantum-resistant algorithms, if we can prove the security of our tools, then explain this. Explain why every single week, 3 times a day, a major security incidents keep happening. How comes the technology that we use, that we develop, that we build, based on these modern approaches with proven mathematical statements there, fail to provide the security that we want? That's the paradox. Now, of course, you'd be right to point to me that it's not because some things are proven that's why we use these things, and we use things that are not proven secure, granted. So another way to put that is, who does math before doing anything? But even if you use proven technology, sometimes the proofs are wrong. That happened last year with WPA, the Wi-Fi security protocol. It was proved secure. Turned out the proof was wrong. Okay, but that's extremely rare. That's absurdly rare. TLS has only recently started to use proved algorithm. But the real reason, or at least the reason that I want to highlight today, is that proofs use hypotheses. And that's where there's a sharp difference between theory and reality. Because if you try to apply mathematics outside of the perimeter that it was proven inside, well, then you get into trouble. So if you try to apply Pythagoras' theorem on a sphere, it doesn't work, cannot work. So what you need to keep in mind is that we as cryptographers, as mathematicians, as people who try to prove things, we work in an ideal world on the left. We can prove things, we can actually have confidence in what statements we write down, and then we publish papers, and then we have our PhDs, and we're happy. Then in the real world, you have to adapt this theoretical approach to make a product in the middle. At least that's the implementer's view of the product. And then the product undergoes maintenance and feature bloat and issues and bugs, and then you get the product on the right. And so the question is, of all the provably secure parameters, of all the proofs I got on my ideal model, what remains in the actual product? Was it all in vain? Or are there a few things that remains? Well, hopefully the picture gives a hint that some properties are lost, perhaps. And that's where a lot of effort has to be put in trying to make sure that at least the important stuff remains. I just mentioned one example, just for those of you who want to see mathematics, but I promise it won't be much, which is the ECDAC algorithm. It's used all over the place. It's been developed in the 1990s as a digital signature algorithm. It's used in passports, it's used in cryptocurrencies, it's used for software security, so all over the place. It works with elliptic curves, and therefore it is in principle vulnerable to quantum algorithms. But as of now, no one ever managed to run any substantial quantum computer, so it's relatively considered safe, as long as a certain mathematical problem is hard. And this problem is, given u to the x, find x. If you can't do that, in principle, I can prove it's secure, which is called the discrete logarithm problem. So, simple enough. Simple operation, simple to explain, in principle. Now, if you ask a cryptographer, Then you say, okay, I want to use this algorithm. I want to use it in some product. The cryptographer will tell you, okay, well, so as long as the discrete log problem is hard and you don't give the secret away, of course, then you're safe. Just compute u to the x, u being some formula I don't care about, and keep x a secret, and you're good. Brilliant. And then the implementer comes by. I'm putting a few things under the rug. We don't care about crypto so much as we care about the rest now. The implementer comes by and says, okay, very fine, but you said u to the x. What does that mean? Okay, cryptographer has a PhD in math or something like that, and then they figure out, okay, this guy is probably not very clever. Let me go with it slowly. U to the x is u times u times u times u times x times, okay? Well, fair enough. What's the issue with that? That's correct. I mean, mathematically speaking, that's absolutely true. No, the problem is the cryptographer has a different mindset. He thinks that's what the implementer is thinking about. What is the implementer thinking about? The implementer is thinking about, okay, how do I compute this? And if you do it this naive way, if you just multiply and multiply and multiply, then you run into trouble that the cryptographer had no idea about. Problems that, for some reason, didn't come to the public eye until the late 1990s. Well, of course, if you ever try to compute something to some power, you know the problem, right? If I ask you, okay, what's 3 squared? Easy, that's 9. If I ask you, what is 3 to the power 173? It will take some time. Well, measure the time, break the thing. Because the longer the operation, the higher the exponent, right? So if you can measure time just with a timer, just with a clock, you can recover the secret. In 1996, this was news. I mean, that's obvious now, hopefully to you. But just measuring the time it takes for an implementation gives you secret information that breaks the security of a system that we don't know how to break with mathematics. Right? Now, computers take time to perform operations just like you do, but that's not all. They produce heat, they consume energy, they make noise, they have subcomponents, they do operations they don't even tell you about, and they don't do the operation that you ask them to do. Computers are not slaves, not to mean that they have their mind of their own, but they do things that are fairly complicated underneath the hood. And if you don't know that, as an implementer or as a cryptographer, you make mistakes. Just a simple example, on the left, what you could find in a paper that says, well, compute A times B. Easy enough. Now, if you want to actually perform this operation, you need something like what's on the right. And that's an easy case. That's just one multiplication. Imagine the complexity. Imagine each operation there does things that the cryptographer doesn't think about and may break some assumptions. One example, you've got transistors in your devices. Every device today is made of transistors. When transistors change from 0 to 1, they do something. They produce heat, they consume energy, they emit photons. What cryptographers has a PhD in physics? They don't care about that. Well, they should. Why? Because if you do ECDSA and measure the battery consumption, you see things like this, if the implementation is naive. You see zeros and 1, and that's exactly the secret information. You just recover it with a voltmeter. No math involved. But you could do worse. You could actually, I said it emits a photon. Can you look at it? Yes, you can. You can actually have pictures of the computers, of the transistors, as they are switching. And you just read the secret information. Easy enough. You have memory. As you implement, you use variables, you use data. This data is stored somewhere. To the cryptographer, to the mathematician, it doesn't matter where it's stored. It's just a number. But to the implementer, it does. Because if it is on the hard drive, or in the RAM, or in the register, or in the cache, it will be different. And if it is different, it means the timing is not the same. It means you can measure something as an attacker, and that makes a difference. For instance, you have two programs that run on different OSs, on different virtual machines, but at the end of the day, they have to use the same memory. If they do so, contention for CPU caches reveal data access patterns, And now, if you imagine any encryption going on that uses, say, a substitution table, well, it has to look for it in the memory somewhere. An attacker in program 1 can read what program 2 is doing, not by using math, not by circumventing security mechanisms, just by measuring time. And that's not theory. I mean, you can do a lot of things with that. You can recover keys, you can recover keystrokes, and that's been done again and again and again. Most recently, you may have heard of Spectre, Meltdown, TL Bleed, these kind of things work exactly in that way. What they do is they perform operations, they have your computer do calculations, and they measure how long it takes. That's as simple as that. Or as complicated as that, because of course that's fast, so you have to measure time very precisely. So that's the part where the implementer has to worry about how fast this computation is going to do, or she has to think about where the memory is stored, or what consumption, memory consumption my operations are going to do. What software programmer knows how many volts a given operation will use? None of them, right? No programming languages give you that. But there's worse, or they're better, depending on your side. Now, when you shut down your computer, and you haven't stored anything in non-volatile memory, in principle, what happens? Everything's lost. You may even count on it. You may think, okay, this is destroyed. But the truth is it doesn't. Non-volatile memory is non-volatile, but volatile memory is not really volatile. Actually, if you look at what happens to data in the RAM, it is there, and unless you explicitly erase it, data that is not explicitly, completely overwritten is not disappearing, it's just slowly fading out of existence. And we can slow this process using, for instance, liquid nitrogen. And this is not theory, this is things we actually do. We do that for forensics, for instance, to kind of freeze time during an investigation and get information that would be erased otherwise. And then you get all the secret keys, you get all the messages, you get the screen of the user as they were using the device, even if the device is shut down. This, the cryptographers don't necessarily know about or care about. In the same line of reasoning, what's a wire through which you send current? That's an antenna. So you probably all know that using proper equipment, you can measure whatever is sent through, say, an HDMI cable and recover the contents of a screen from a distance. That dates from the 1980s. Now, but you may not know that any USB cable, any socket, any USB cable really has a ground. This ground, if you ask an electrician, would tell you, well, it should be 0 volt, right? The ground is not electrically connected to anything. That's not quite true. So even an electrician has it wrong. Actually, it is 0 volt more or less. There are small variations due to electromagnetic emanations. Electromagnetic emanations, fair enough. Where do they come from? Electronics. Electronics produce emanations. We can measure them, and we can make them correspond to operations in the CPU. Once we've done that, we read the secret of the device right away. Okay. Noise, same thing. I won't go through it. And we can even detect things or learn things in systems that we cannot decrypt. Just last example, and then I'll wrap up. You're surveilled by a drone, military drone, say. You don't decrypt military-grade cryptography. You don't need to. What you do is you flicker a light. Why? Because it has a video stream. The video stream is encrypted, of course, but it is also compressed. If you flicker a light, you make compression worse. If you make compression worse, the drone has to use more power and to use more data to send the video. So you just flicker a light and you look at the power spectrum around the room, and you see whether or not you're being surveilled at this very moment. You don't need to break cryptography to break cryptography. You don't need to do math. You just need to be clever. So while cryptography is necessary for security, it is absolutely not sufficient. And there is a context in which security guarantees can be used or not. So as a conclusion, while we need to focus on security and we need to use cryptography and certainly need to understand what we're doing, we also need to make it as widely usable as possible by accounting for all these different variables that I just mentioned, by connecting the dots, and by making technology as boring as it can be, so that people can just use it without thinking that it's there and just do their jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Remy. Thank you, Remy. What an interesting lesson you taught us today. After cryptography on physics, on lights, on time, on energy, on so many important issues that we realize that it's not only buying a cryptographic primitive, but it's all these questions of implementation are important. Do we have some questions in the rooms for Mr. Remy Géraud? No questions? Yes, please.
So what would be your recommendation for a software company to organize their, basically their audit after software has been produced? Because apparently, regardless of the cryptography you're using, you're going to have to run into many troubles not related to the cryptography itself, but how it's implemented. So what does it take to have a proper audit of something implemented around cryptography?
I think the key point there is we make boundaries, right? It's a software company, it's not a hardware company. So you'd say, well, I wrote secure software. My point is precisely there is no such thing as secure software. There is secure device, there is secure operation, and it has to encompass all aspects of the device. So depending on your perimeter, depending on your goals, depending on the risks that you're willing to take, you would have to take into account the broadest context that you can. Of course, that's money, right? No one can have infinite money. But really try at least to wonder about how a faulty hardware component, try to understand how a faulty network connection will impact the security of your device. If you don't ask the question, you're not going to get answers. Of course, it's not always the worst case scenario, but the thing is, people don't ask these questions. They develop Bitcoin and stuff like that without thinking about the consequences there. So ask the questions. That's my recommendation.
Thank you. One more questions? So we'll continue our session now, but please, if you want to ask questions in private to Mr. Remy Géraud, just contact him, and you can contact him later today. Thank you very much. Thank you, Remy. Large applause. So now we are going to change a little bit the subject, because we are now going to talk, the next three intervention, we'll talk about cryptocurrencies. So I would like to invite on stage now Mr. George Payne. Welcome, Mr. George Payne. Mr. George Payne, good morning. You're a cryptographic expert. You come from the US, from San Francisco, I believe. Is that true?
Yeah, well,
yes.
I'm from the UK, but we are based in San Francisco.
All right. And you're going to talk about cryptography as a cryptography as a medium of exchange.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much. Well, this floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hi, guys. So I'm moving toward cryptocurrency as a medium of exchange. I think this is particularly relevant right now, considering its uptake and its value in the market. So what I will be kind of focusing on is actually why there has been slightly more of a bearish market this year with regards to Bitcoin and some other currencies. And so what I'll be offering is through our research, a slightly alternative view as to why this has happened. More specifically, the fact that it's not currently being used as a currency, but more like a financial asset. So, is the monitor working? Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'll start with a question. Is there anyone here who's recently used Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency to buy something like coffee? Thankfully, not that many people are putting up their hands, because that's precisely the problem at the moment. It's not being used as a currency for micropayments such as coffee. And this is incredibly difficult for the crypto market because it should precisely be used for things like buying coffee. Now, ultimately, the reason for this is that what we have seen is that there's a massive increase in transaction fees. And this is coupled with the fact that cryptocurrencies take a very long time to be confirmed, transaction payments, okay? So, if I was to go and buy a coffee in the US, go buy $3 on something, it could cost me up to $5 to make that transaction, which is making it completely infeasible and impractical to use it as a currency. So some of you might be asking right now, why is it that we have to wait so long, and why is it that you have such high transaction fees? And basically, it's because you need to wait for something called confirmations when making a cryptocurrency or a Bitcoin transaction. So what that means is you need to wait for them because when you make this transaction, the transaction itself gets sent to the Bitcoin network. That then gets confirmed by a miner, and you need to wait for at least 6 confirmations for it to be like a validated payment. And the reason you would do this is to prevent something called double spend. So at the beginning, Bitcoin was used to prevent the issue of double spend. As a digital currency, you wouldn't want to replicate that kind of coin and then double spend it, kind of screwing over merchants and vendors. But the issue is that basically between 0 confirmations and 1 confirmation, what could happen is that same payment, that same transaction is basically double spent by the payer. So if I were to go into a coffee shop and purchase coffee, and if I were to leave with 0 confirmations, I could then basically go and double spend that transaction, still have my coffee, but have cheated the vendor out of that payment. So as a result, what we do is when we're using Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency payments, we need to be waiting for confirmations. However, this currently is the case, as I'll explain in a minute. So at the moment, it's recommended that you would wait for 6 confirmations, as you make a payment. This is obviously infeasible if you're picking up something like coffee or making an offline payment, because waiting around for your payment to be confirmed obviously is completely impractical these days, especially if you're in a line, there's other issues. Online, it's not as much of an issue because a payment can be confirmed in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, or more. But for offline payments in particular, this is precisely the issue. However, this hasn't always been the case. Prior to 2017 and prior to particularly March 2017, you could actually make 0 confirmation payments. And what this meant is that I could go and spend Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in Starbucks and anywhere that was accepting those sorts of payments. However, part of the problem here is that prior to 2017, the level of transactions was manageable on the Bitcoin network. So what happened is around about March 2017, what happened is the block size hit 1 megabyte. And the issue here is that the blocks then filled up, and it massively delayed the time it took to confirm these payments. So if you imagine it like a bottleneck, so if the miners are the ones confirming the payments, some of you might be familiar with this term. What they're doing is confirming a transaction as it happens. Unfortunately, what happened here is that because the block size hit that limit, they then filled up, and it took a long time to kind of have those payments. There was a bottleneck confirming those transactions. And so what's happening here is that I'm going to make a transaction. I'm then having to wait for that transaction to be confirmed because of the high level of transactions taking place. There's a bottleneck around that. And unfortunately, this then led to potentially $20 billion of transactions being missed out on because, we then have this kind of bottleneck around the transactions being made, and that's when you started having to wait for those confirmations. Because of that delay, I could then go and double spend that payment. So as a result, we then needed to kind of started to wait for those confirmations. Now, this then affected the market capitalization. But as a result, the real kind of issue here is that everyone who was, super excited, and all these companies that were originally accepting Bitcoin payments and other cryptocurrency payments started to leave. So for example, Steam, which is a technology and platform that is used by a lot of people in that sort of community, stopped accepting payments in Bitcoins. Then Microsoft stopped. Stripe, Reddit, which is, in particular very strong with the Bitcoin community, and others. So this had a real effect on the use of cryptocurrency, in particular Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. And this is basically what our research has led to, is that what we've seen this year is an incredibly bearish market with regards to Bitcoin. And a lot of people necessarily outside of that particular space have seen it as this kind of like, is it this thing that's going to go away in a few years' time? In reality, people within the Bitcoin space, will always kind of evangelize about its use and blockchain's use in the future. But in real terms, for people outside, they just see this kind of bearish market, and it looks terrible. If I invested in Bitcoin in this time last year, I would be having a great time. But if I'd hold on to it now, I'd have lost a lot of value. And essentially, what we've actually looked at is there's three main reasons that a lot of people are suggesting why this is occurring. One of them is that ICOs haven't been doing too well recently. In particular, the SEC has had an issue with some ICOs guaranteeing return of money if they go wrong. What you've also had is around about the Thanksgiving period, people are getting rid of their Bitcoin in order to spend the money. And what you have is hedge funds closing up the accounting year. However, what we're suggesting is that a lot of the trajectory of the market is because it's not being spent as currency. It's called cryptocurrency for a reason. It's not just this kind of basic cryptography technology. What it is, it should be spent as a currency. And so what we've said is that, if I have something and I don't see the value in it, if it's not seeing the value as a currency, of course, I'm actually not going to see that as valuable. And this has been reflected in the market here. Unlike other currencies, you're not going to have a central bank kind of raising and lowering interest rates in order to kind of prevent this sort of volatility in the market. But with here, it's completely decentralized. So it's reliant and hugely contingent on the perception of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as valuable by the wider community. And if that's not being seen, then we're going to see this kind of downward trajectory. So a lot of people have been talking about a bottom recently and whether it's going to hit this kind of plateau and then rise up again. Unfortunately, though, I'm suggesting what my team at Gateway, what we've done in our research is that it could continue unless a solution is brought about, and that solution requires zero confirmations. We need to go back to a prior 2017 stage when you could actually make cryptocurrency payments with zero confirmations. And we make zero confirmation payments, again, to prevent double spend. Now, we at Gateway have come up with a solution for that we think is viable, and we're putting it onto the market. But it's incredibly important, so you have a double spend prevention protocol. But it's incredibly important to have what's called an on-chain solution rather than off-chain. So at the moment, things like the Lightning Network have been proposed as an off-chain solution, and there are certain on-chain solutions that aren't instantaneous. On-chain and off-chain is basically relating to scaling the blockchain and seeing whether you can basically increase the block size or use side chains to kind of compound loads of transactions together and do them all at once. However, what we'd actually propose is that an on-chain solution is the kind of one you want to move forward with. Now here, I just go through the off-chain, on-chain, why you would need on-chain. Again, so like macro payments, integration, spend flexibility, and offline payments are facilitated on-chain. Off-chain doesn't have the same kind of pros, and what we're seeing in real terms is that things like the Lightning Network are struggling with scaling because of that reason. So the solution via off-chain isn't going to be feasible, and unfortunately, I do believe that it will lead to a continuation of this fall. So this is incredibly important with P2P payments, because with P2P, you would need to have zero confirmations in order to make transactions like a coffee bill amongst friends, dinner, rent, and things like this. More importantly, though, with B2C, if I were to go into a coffee store and spend Bitcoin, I need to be able to spend it enough for me to walk out straight away without having to wait for confirmations. Otherwise, it's completely impractical. Go around here today, every single one of the POS devices at the conference over the 3 days, they're all pushing for instantaneous payments. You're not going into a coffee shop or a restaurant waiting and expecting to wait for someone to call up to make sure that you have the money in the bank and go home. Everyone is instantaneous. And if we expect that of normal fiat currencies, you would also require it of cryptocurrencies. And if that isn't an option in the moment, if people aren't actually being able to spend their cryptocurrency instantaneously, then we're not going to be it's not, by the wider market, it will not be seen as a currency as valuable, something as fiat. So it's as much important for the Bitcoin community as it is for the wider space, the wider economy. Otherwise, it will continue to be seen as a very gimmicky currency that isn't, backed by people. What it also suggests is that, if you look at Venezuela and other countries that are, particularly receptive to removing their fiat currency and replacing it with a cryptocurrency, you would need infrastructure in place to allow for zero confirmation payments. This is also going to be a problem with other cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin Cash later on. As the transactions increase, you will need to have zero confirmation payments still doable on the network. Otherwise, they're going to run into the same problems as Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first one to experience this because the block size is smaller than the rest of them. The other ones have had increased block size, but they will also experience the same problems as soon as those blocks fill up. Cool. So I just wanted to leave you with this quote from Satoshi, who was the anonymous founder of Bitcoin. So what he's saying is that in order for Bitcoin's kind of like full value to be realized by the market, fully implemented, beyond just kind of this gimmicky thing that you find on Reddit, is that you need there to be a payment processing transaction. And he suggests 10 seconds or less. Considering the instantaneous requirement of other fiat currencies and what consumers are used to, you would need it to be instantaneous. 10 seconds is still a bit of a lag there, but our solution at the moment is actually instantaneous, 10 seconds or less. So it's important not just for Bitcoin itself, but it's important for other cryptocurrencies to be accepted as currencies, valuable things around the world, and to replace fiat currencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. George Payne. Large applause. Thank you for teaching us about the challenges on cryptocurrency. Is there some questions in the room? Yes, one question.
Hi, my name's Colin Mallett, Trusted Renewables. I'm very interested in what you're saying, and I completely resonate with what you were saying just now about the payment processing. And 10 seconds is too slow.
Yeah.
I've been in Japan where I've seen the NTT guys doing payments on a contactless card, which is a few milliseconds, 100 milliseconds if you can manage it.
Yeah.
And so really that should be our objective. Now what I'm really pleased about, and interested in your comment, at this fantastic conference, we're here where people know about e-wallets, they know about smart cards and this well-established technology. And what really excites me is the combination of all the know-how that we've got here linked in with the emerging Bitcoins, because I think this is very exciting.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. The reason why cryptocurrencies is so great is the technology behind it. But it's really important that it's coupled with existing infrastructure to kind of really streamline it. Otherwise, it will remain as this kind of gimmicky thing. Yeah, 100%.
Well, thank you. Do we have more questions? Perhaps one last question, George, is you talked a lot about Bitcoin, but do you think towards this challenge, is there a crypto money or 1, 2, or 3 crypto monies that you think are best oriented to meet this challenge ahead?
Yeah, so I think generally if we speak for the whole cryptocurrency industry and market, what you will find is that it will be 1 or 2, 2 or 3 that really kind of push forward. As with most things in nature, as the top 1% will produce the value. There are going to be a lot of coins that you see that come and go. I was speaking with someone the other day, and someone was trying to sell them Dash, and they thought it was a scam. So there are going to be coins that come up and have issues, and you need to look at any ICO. There's a lot of ICOs with problems because they're not backed by technology. I think what you are going to see is Bitcoin. It will remain very strong. You are seeing the rise of Ether because of the technology backing it. It's incredibly it can be utilized in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of other coins that actually can be built. You have platforms that can be built upon them very well. But I would suggest that you will see the rise in use of 2 or 3, whereas some of them not so much. And what you also have is that you also have community coins. So there's one called Dogecoin, which we actually support on the wallet. It's very much amongst that particular community, communities on Reddit. You actually will see coins created for that value that have basically no purpose else and outside. So they're valuable for that, but it's because there's no inherent value in money or cryptocurrency. It's a value placed upon it.
Thank you very much, George. Thank you. Thank you very much. A large applause, Mr. George Payne. Thank you, George. The only thing, George, I'm not sure about investing in this crypto money in Venezuela. You've not convinced me. Yes, but okay, we can talk later. I would like, well, you introduced a subject which is a ICO, initial coin offering, and to talk about that on stage, we have Mr. John Lindsay. Mr. John Lindsay, are you here? Yes, please, on stage. Mr. John Lindsay, welcome. Welcome to you. Please, come on stage. You have a micro over there. You have a mic and you have to pass your slides of your presentation. So Mr. John Lindsay, can you say a word about yourself, introduce yourself, and then I'll let you do the presentation and meet you again later for some questions. Thank you.
Great. My name is John Lindsay. Our company is, I'm actually presenting on blockchain technology. My co-founder is within the same company, and the ICO business is sort of a secondary. So this one is pitched more for corporate and government clients as opposed to startups. So it could be a better fit for this conference. So essentially the product that we're working on, and this is a hybrid blockchain product. Hybrid blockchain means that it's a centralized trusted authority, and then after that it's hashed to a public blockchain. There was a previous speaker that talked about a sale between a salesperson and an island buyer, and it involved the hashing design. So this product essentially uses similar technology, but for auditing purposes as opposed to purchase of an island. And the use case is insurance. So the first deal that we had was with the US insurance company. And so what we did is we put their certificates on a hybrid blockchain. The use case is customer complaints. So basically, customers will complain that they didn't sign the certificate. And if you're on a private blockchain like this, or not, sorry, a private database like an Oracle or SAP, the one on the left here, you'll run into this problem of them not being able to prove that it technically was changed or not. The reason why is because key management is done privately, so if it goes to a court and there's a judge speaking, the judge would consult an expert, and the expert would technically be able to not prove that there wasn't an edit that had been done. So the difference here is that with a public blockchain, it's distributed over many computers, the hashes. Yeah, so this allows that when you compare the hashes, you can know that it hasn't been changed. So other use cases that we're looking into after this insurance one: vehicle life cycle management, Second deal we're working. There's a second conversation later in the afternoon with the U.S. Department of Commerce. So I could wait before getting into the next deal. Yeah. This one is in. This project is in India, and this one's in Sacramento, California. All right. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay. Mr. John Lindsay, what would be your main message to the audience today? What would be your main message? Because I'm not sure we have understood exactly.
Oh, so basically, I've described this before to an investment bank in Brazil. A private blockchain is similar to like a fingerprint. If there's a crime that's committed, you can compare fingerprints, but it's a little inaccurate. The use case of this public blockchain is that it's more like DNA. So if there's a crime that's committed, the DNA is a lot harder to fake.
Okay, so you use blockchain as a fingerprint, is that correct?
Yeah, but the use case is in post-accident. So like if there's some kind of accident, then that's when the database would be consulted to see, yeah, you understand? Yeah.
Yeah, more or less, yeah. Thank you, Mr. John Lindsay. Do we have some questions in the room for Mr. John Lindsay? No questions? Well, large applause, Mr. John Lindsay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, we have a special issue with blockchain cryptocurrencies and money, which is the acceptation in the bank model. As we know, we have cryptocurrency on one side, we have classic currencies on the other side. And the question is, can we cross the bridge? Well, to give some lead answers to these questions, I would like to invite Mrs. Andrea Stranska from Czechoslovakia. Welcome to Mrs. Andrea Stranska.
Hello, everybody.
Good morning, Andrea.
Good afternoon.
Thank you to join us. And, well, yes, I think Czechia is sometimes named about as a kind of a cryptocurrency or blockchain, perhaps...
kind of a hub in Europe.
Yes, kind of hub in Europe, yes. And, well, you have some experience in trading cryptocurrencies, and you are one of the leading firms in Czechia about that. And you are going to talk about us about the first blockchain account or Bitcoin account in a bank.
Bitcoin account,
okay,
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, hello, everybody. First of all, maybe I would like to start with a question. If here is someone who still thinks that cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin is a Ponzi. Do we have someone like this here? All right, so everyone trusts cryptocurrencies. That's a good start. Well, who of you owns any cryptocurrencies? Like, I'm sure guys do, but is there anyone else like you guys? Okay, that's not so bad. Well, so far, what we have heard here was the use of cryptocurrencies like for payments or or to spread them, around the globe. How we actually see the cryptocurrencies is also like an investment option. Like it doesn't have to, you don't have to use it every day on a daily basis for small payments, but you can have cryptocurrencies as an investment tool. And this is also how we got to the first bank or Bitcoin account in a bank. well, now I will be struggling as everyone else. So this is just a little bit about our company, because this is not the sales pitch, of course, but as I would like to introduce you the project, I thought that it would be good to show you our way, the journey, like which started in 2014, and it took us quite a lot of energy, and it took us a couple of years, like until we got to this place. Well, so regarding the crypto vision, in 2014 we were quite, I would say, like over excited, very positive. We thought that everyone will be using Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies very soon, that it will be spread. So frankly speaking, we were quite naive. And now, today, we are still like very positive about the usage of cryptocurrencies or about the way how it will be spread. But still, there are some steps that need to be done. Some people think about the cryptocurrencies in general that it is a world like of the darknet, yeah? So that it is a tool for terrorists, for paying for guns, for drugs and whatsoever. But I believe, or I hope so, that I don't look like a terrorist and I still use the cryptocurrencies. But still there is like, I would say, like a strong point of view that the cryptocurrencies do not belong to the financial world, that these are two separated worlds where, or that they cannot be connected and they cannot go hand in hand. And we don't think so. Of course, there are still some people who don't like us for this opinion, especially in the Czech Republic, like the crypto community, but we believe that it is possible and that it can benefit, like, for both ways. So, the main issue is crypto and banks, or maybe sometimes versus banks. Whenever I present, like people from banks, they are quite, maybe like, they are not that much happy when we say the versus, but the situation is like this. Still, there is the point of view that banks do not want to accept cryptocurrencies. They are not interested in the cryptocurrencies because the fact is that the cryptocurrencies are not still mainstream, and I don't think personally that cryptocurrencies someday will be the mainstream. But there are still things that we can really kind of like benefit from, like international payments using the blockchain technology and many others. So, the situation nowadays, in general, across Europe, is that banks are against. This might be caused not only like with banks, but also like with like just with your opinions or in public, that there is lack of knowledge and no technical understanding. Whenever I speak with someone about the cryptocurrencies, people usually do not know that much. Yeah. They are like, okay, but we have read in media that it is a wrong thing, so I think it is a wrong thing. But it's not true. Like in every other area, it is about like getting information and being curious what it can really bring to you. So there is also the fear, and whenever there is something new and new technology, it's not accepted because of the lack of information and because of the fear. People are just scared. Like the cryptocurrencies, it's not a bad world, and there is nothing bad about them. Of course, they can be used for bad things, but on the other hand, when we speak about the like money laundering, there was a study which was published like 3 months ago, and from those 100% like of amount of the money like which are laundered in the world, just 3% of that were cryptocurrencies. So we are still in a situation that we need to influence people and educate people about the cryptocurrencies, that really there is not so many bad things about going on. So, crypto situation in the Czech Republic and how we got like to the first Bitcoin account in a bank. The situation is not easy at all, banks are not willing to open us normal bank accounts. They shut down the bank accounts. As we are an international, or more an international of a company, we were trying to open bank accounts in Europe as well. We have approached over 120 banks, and for now we have 4 bank accounts around Europe. So still, it's not very positive. There is no open discussion, and also we have found the Czech Crypto Association in the Czech Republic to help this. So we were thinking, as like one of the main Bitcoin player on our market, how we can break these ices. What can we do with this? What can we do with this bad stigma and bad karma? The preview, how we are seen like as some kind of bad guys who are interested in frauds. And we have come up with an idea of implementing our platform into a normal standard bank and to connect it. So we have created the Bitcoin banking hybrid platform, and I have been working on this project for over 1 year. But in the end, we made it because our partner became Expo Bank, which is a Russian bank which has branches also in the Czech Republic. And they have come up with an idea that they will create, or they will do their bank as an open banking platform. So we were quite happy about this, and we were discussing, and we were telling them, okay guys, so the open bank platform, it is a great idea, so let's bring Bitcoin to the bank. So first of all, they were looking especially at me like if I'm crazy, or like if I live in some kind of like the sci-fi world. But in the end, we have convinced them, and we kind of made this thing to happen. The way was really long. Like the first Bitcoin bank account in a bank has like been developing like for over 4 years, but we got there, and I'm really happy that it is. So how does it work? Actually, it is a very easy thing, because now you can just enter the internet banking of yours, and apart like from the standard banking account, you can see there your cryptocurrency account, which means that you can buy or sell Bitcoin directly in the internet banking. And the bank is also there, you know, as a kind of like guarantee, because like cryptocurrencies, they are still very much about the trust. If people don't trust cryptocurrencies, they will not be existing. That's the reality. And for some people, we understand that it might be quite difficult to accept like cryptocurrencies like in their mindset. And for some people, it is a really strong argument to see the cryptocurrencies connected with the banking institution, like with the standard bank, which might support the trust in it, that it is not kind of a fraud, but they can really rely on their partner. So here it is, the project that we have done. I'm really happy about this, because as I say, it was a very, very long journey, like how to get in here. And apart, you know, from the business case and like the business model that we have, I'm really happy for this project, especially because we support, or we change the view of cryptocurrencies. This is kind of a revolution, because as I said before, we really connect the standard like financial world with the world of cryptocurrencies. It doesn't have to be either this or this, but it can go really hand in hand. And I believe that this is like the start of the revolution. So apart from this, like we have many other activities, but as we have so many platforms, we really try to make sure that we change the preview of the cryptocurrencies.
Andrea. Many thanks for your presentation. Many thanks for your presentation. I think it's very interesting. I would like a large applause for Andrea. So it's a world premiere, to have created this connection between a bank account and a
Yes.
cryptocurrency.
We are
transaction.
definitely the first one in Europe, and of course there are some different projects like as Revolut. People from fintech definitely know, but this is really the first project of its kind, like of connecting cryptocurrencies with a traditional bank.
So that's well suited, because I think the company you're working for is called World Bitcoin Business. Is that correct?
It
okay.
is, yes.
So that's the final scope of your business ambition, which is very good. Andrea, do we have questions on the room? Yes, please, just one second.
Hello, it's very interesting what you have present now, but during your presentation you have said that you have used the traditional bank as a guarantee. What will be the guarantee if there is no traditional bank for the cryptocurrency? Bitcoin especially.
You never have like the super guarantee, like anything like this. I believe that this is also why there are companies like our on the market, because we have been existing, or we have been on the market since 2014, and the main thing that we are trying to build up is the trust. Yeah. So we support the trust, the customer service. But of course, there are all, just be careful, yeah, because also as in any other fields of business, like also in cryptocurrencies, you have like many scammers, and you can lose lots of money. So you need to always choose the right partner. Yeah. Unfortunately, there is no guarantee like the bank with the bank account, but it's about choosing the correct partner, the right partner with whom you will be dealing with. Yeah.
Thank you. We have the time for one more question.
Thank you for your presentation. I have one simple question. How many clients do you have right now? Or how many bank accounts opened?
You mean with the Bitcoin banking hybrid platform, with the bank? The bank has over 20,000 clients, and regarding the new NEO account, we have launched the account by the end of October. So for now, there is not so many of them, but it's almost 100. But apart from this 100, we have like 8,000 of our clients in the Czech Republic.
Yeah, it's brand new. It's end of October, so maybe you need to come back next year and ask a question again. Yes, we have one last question over there. Thank you. Yeah. Can we have the mic activated? Yeah. Yeah. Please stand up if you can. Yeah.
Let's say, how did you convince them? And the second one, the second one is, what are the services that you are offering to the bank's customers, apart investments? What are the other services you are offering right now?
So the first question, how we did convince the bank. The bank authority, like the Czech National Bank. It was like this part was mainly on our banking partner, on the Expo Bank, because we, as a cryptocurrency company, we are not that much strong, like in the relationship to the Czech National Bank, but the major part of work was on the Expo Bank. Yeah, so they did I would say, the most difficult negotiations. There is also the legal classification of Bitcoin and virtual currencies. Of course, it helps us that the Czech Republic is kind of open-minded towards the cryptocurrencies, that it is not a no-go. No license is required, for example, as in Germany. In France, the legislation is also very, very complicated. So the bank, the Expo Bank, mainly did the most difficult negotiations with the regulator. And the second question was regarding the services. Yeah. So with the Expo Bank, the cooperation is about offering clients buying and selling Bitcoin directly in the internet banking. The phase 2, the version 2.0, is or will be very soon that the clients will be also able to send bitcoins to the other wallet or to accept cryptocurrencies from other wallets to their internet banking. So far, this is the main platform, and this is the main activities or services that we are offering with Expo Bank.